An Introduction to Cosmopolitanism. To initiate discussion, let's begin with a strong opening statement. Cosmopolitanism is an important stance that we desperately need in the contemporary world. Today, there are terrible wars and conflicts taking place, and immense human suffering in the world. Furthermore, it would be hard not to notice increased levels of chauvinism, extreme nationalism, political tribalism, and egotism. In many quarters, attitudes are growing narrower, less informed, more insular, suspicious, and confrontational. We know these are potent sources of tension and conflict. Against this background, engagement with cosmopolitan ideas and arguments offers great promise. Cosmopolitan philosophy is an ethic of openness and hospitality that seeks to broaden horizons. It encourages sympathetic perceptions of human beings the world over, and enriched attitudes about inclusion, interaction, and cooperation. Cosmopolitanism promotes personal development, social progress, peace, and flourishing. Part 1: Cosmopolitanism defined. In its bare essentials, cosmopolitanism is the view that all people have equal moral worth. Cosmopolitanism is at center an ethical position that emphasizes the equal moral value of all human beings. The value of persons is grounded in their humanity, irrespective of other characteristics. By characteristics, we can mean a range of properties or features, including categorizations, inherent or attributed, like race, ethnicity, religion, gender, age, social status, etc. For cosmopolitanism, such properties are not morally significant. At this point, one might well respond, hang on. Those characteristics are deeply important for people. In reply, the cosmopolitan would surely agree. However, they would also clarify their position by insisting that the characteristics just listed should not determine a person's life prospects, their entitlements or opportunities, or moral recognition as worthwhile human beings. It is in this important sense that the characteristics are not morally significant, certainly not as significant as a person's humanity. Thus, cosmopolitanism insists that, in terms of worth and regard, a person's humanity takes priority over all else. In Patriotism and Cosmopolitanism, 1994, Martha C. Nussbaum notes that the cosmopolitan is the person for whom the primary allegiance is to the community of human beings in the entire world. We can expand on Nussbaum's meaning here with some comments from the cosmopolitan writer, Thomas Pogge, in a citation that recurs throughout the global justice literature. In Cosmopolitanism and Sovereignty, 1992, Pogge states the following: 3 elements are shared by all cosmopolitan positions. First, individualism. The ultimate units of moral concern are human beings, or persons, rather than, say, family lines, tribes, ethnic, cultural, or religious communities, nations, or states. The latter may be units of concern only indirectly, in virtue of their individual members or citizens. Second, universality. The status of ultimate unit of moral concern attaches to every living human being equally, not merely to some subset, such as men, aristocrats, Aryans, whites, or Muslims. Third, generality. This special status has global force. Persons are ultimate units of moral concern for everyone, not only for their compatriots, fellow religionists, or such like. Note the claim about individualism. The ultimate units of moral concern are human beings, or persons. This means that families, friendship circles, religious communities, nations and other groups, are of secondary or derivative value at best. It also means that we can say clearly why authoritarianism, oppression, discrimination, exclusion, corruption, poverty, social instability and conflict are terrible evils. They are bad for individual human beings, all of whom matter inherently, regardless of, or prior to, any other characteristics, commitments or allegiances. Thus, We are above all dutifully bound to the community of all human beings because it contains units of ultimate moral concern, human individuals. The moral importance of each member is in no way diminished or enhanced by membership in subsets within this broader community. Nationality, religion, ethnicity, etc., have no bearing on a person's inherent worth. Part 2: Cosmopolitanism and the question of community. Recall the cosmopolitan ideal of belonging to the community of human beings. The notion of community here is important, but it is also open to debate. After all, we might think of a community as a set of real and felt connections between participants who interact in frequent and important ways. On this view, a family, friendship circle, or church group, for example, is a community. We could even apply this concept to the nation, since we interact in special ways with co-nationals even if we don't in fact know the majority of them. For nations are held together by economic practices, shared languages, traditions, values, laws, national holidays, ceremonies, collective subordination to a state, etc. However, if we expand the notion of community beyond these limits, and include people outside our national borders, for whom we have no real or felt connections whatsoever, we appear to stretch the idea beyond credibility. Thus, it might seem that cosmopolitanism actually fails because its ideal of a community of all human beings can't really exist. Communities certainly matter, and engender duties and responsibilities, but they must be far smaller than the cosmopolitan contends. However, the cosmopolitan has two ways to respond to this interesting objection. First, the cosmopolitan could reject the conception of community just given. Instead, community can be understood in a non-associative or non-relational sense. The idea is that every human being is a member of the community of human beings, and this community just does not depend on any real or felt interactions with other members. The community exists, and ties its members together, due to crucial characteristics or features that every member possesses as human beings. Cosmopolitans who appeal to this expanded notion of community propose several such unifying features, for example rationality, agency, complex sentience, the capacity for moral excellence, the possession of human rights, the possession of a soul, or some such. The important thing to note here is that community in this sense is understood by cosmopolitans to hold regardless of familiarity or economic, linguistic, national, or political associations. One way to encourage the idea is to note that, for any two people anywhere in the world, should they encounter one another, they are both capable of mutual recognition as human beings, and not as instruments of use or some other species. This hypothetical holds true for any two people in the world, whether they in fact meet or not. Thus, the community of human beings exists globally in virtue of vital common features that all humans possess as humans. Alternatively, a cosmopolitan could accept the associative conception of community, but deny that it has anti-cosmopolitan implications. Instead, a global community of human beings could be understood to exist in associative or relational terms due to the phenomenon of globalization. Today, technological and economic advances have yielded large-scale movements in goods, information, and people. The consequences and byproducts of human activities have widespread, global consequences. This means that the world is much smaller, more interwoven and connected than ever before. Today, we can cite the relational or associative character of international forces, such as finance, work, trade, the internet, resource extraction, energy production, waste generation, transnational business, intergovernmental political organization, in entities such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, and suprastate governance, for example in the European Union. This view emphasizes the fact of global associations and relations to support the claim that a globally inclusive community makes perfect sense in associative or relational terms. Globalization is of course extensive today, but it has developed over the last few centuries. Indeed, as early as 1795, Immanuel Kant wrote, In Perpetual Peace, a philosophical sketch, that the peoples of the earth have thus entered in varying degrees into a universal community, and it has developed to the point where a violation of rights in one part of the world is felt everywhere. Globalization enables interactive connections between people on a global scale. However, it is in itself neither good nor bad. In fact, it presents opportunities and risks. Indeed, Kant was both deeply concerned about the consequent threat of international conflict and sensitive to the prospect of global unity. Kant continues, "The idea of a cosmopolitan right is therefore not fantastic and overstrained, it is a necessary complement to the unwritten code of political and international right, transforming it into a universal right of humanity. Only under this condition can we flatter ourselves that we are continually advancing towards a perpetual peace." So we have conceptions of community, non-associative and associative. They are notably different, and bound to produce different obligations between members overall. However, we can see that both conceptions are available to the cosmopolitan. And on either view of community, the cosmopolitan foregrounds membership in the community of human beings over all other connections and relationships. Part 3: Cosmopolitanism and Global Justice. It is therefore hopefully easy to see how this connects to a wide range of concerns. Principally, since every human being has inherent value, the kinds of issues facing people around the world, issues we could collect under the heading of global justice, are crucial matters for cosmopolitans. Examples include extreme poverty, international conflict, including war and terrorism, climate change, refugee crises, immigration controls, labor rights, unfair trade, and vast inequalities in health, welfare, income and resources. These crucial topics require a separate video each, however. Some questions in this context, which you may wish to consider, include the following. 1. On the issue of immigration, are closed borders justifiable? How would a cosmopolitan respond, and should we agree with them? 2. Could war be justified for purposes of national self-defense alone, or are humanitarian reasons ever sufficient for attacking another country? 3. What obligations do we in the affluent West have towards people suffering absolute poverty in other parts of the world? How much should we give, if at all? 4. Is there room for personal connections and projects within cosmopolitanism? Does cosmopolitanism require a cold and calculated concern for all people at the expense of close and affectionate relationships with family and friends? It should be apparent that critical engagement with such questions helps to illuminate a number of important matters related to identity, value and global justice. It seems clear that both cosmopolitanism and the debates it encourages are of profound consequence and importance for our contemporary, globalized world. Thank you.